As you probably know, 2 years ago, after a magnificent 6 months of sailing, we hauled our 40-foot boat out of the water for some TLC. We thought we had found the perfect boat for us. She was a great size for living, blue water ready, able to withstand brutal elements in high latitudes, and she looked beautiful. But we quickly learned when we hauled her out that things weren't as great as they looked. And more than 2 years later, we're still chasing problems to try to get her back in the water, including finding rust in places that could set our project back for months. I'm Taryn, this is Logan, and this is Max. Our life rarely goes as planned, and this story is no different. But we are determined to rebuild our beautiful steel boat, even stronger than she was before. And we're bringing you along with us. After weeks of needle gunning paint out of the bilges, we still didn't seem to get anywhere. We were constantly finding more rust and having to tear more of the interior apart to get to it. Every time we hit a new bit of paint, we seemed to find more rust. A simple job of fixing a few small rust bubbles was quickly turning into a job that we hadn't expected and obviously did not want to do. There is a reason for that, but we will get more into that in the next video. Well, today I have the worst job possibly from this entire project, and that is pulling the head out. So there's some rust underneath where the head is, and we need to get to that rust obviously to fix it so that we don't end up with a hole in our boat. And now is the time to do that. So that means I have to go in there, pull all those hoses off, and then actually pull the head itself out. It's going to be disgusting. I'm not looking forward to it at all. At all. And then we're going to have to start taking all the starboard and everything else out of there. I'm just dreading this. It's just so icky. But what can you do when you're already this deep into rebuilding your floating home that all of your hopes and dreams in this lifetime happen to hinge on? You just keep going. But of course under there was more wood, and I left that for Logan.
Today I'm going to cut out the wood bits under the head and under the sink in the head to be able to access the little bit of rust that's under there so that we can get it painted. So earlier this week Taryn removed the head, there it is, and these disgusting hoses. So now I just have to cut all the wood away and be able to get in there. So there is a seam in the hull right about here that runs along, and it's all, you can see the paint's all bubbled up around that. So I'm just gonna cut this back here so we can get to that seam and fix it. So that's what I could see from under there. Yeah, it's really not bad. It's just surface rust at this point. This here is what had me a little concerned. Yeah, there's a tiny bit of scaling there, but it's really not that bad. So we'll have to needle scale that all. And there's some right there as well on the side. Yeah, and then just try and get as much of this cleaned up as possible.
Next, Logan moved on to the shower basin, which was a project that had actually been on our list since we hauled out the boat. We knew some of the wood was rotten due to its not being sealed properly, and we weren't sure how bad things were underneath.
So now I can finally see what's under this floor, and it's not very good. There's a lot of rust along one of the ribs. It doesn't look bad as I go upwards, but I may have to cut more of this bulkhead out to find it. Like to find the end of it, but so there's a good patch here. We'll have to check this. It's all bubbled up in here. But this rib here is got quite a bit of flaking on it. And we just have to make sure that there's gonna be nothing thin enough to go through the hole here. So I can see it right now, like right where my finger is quite a bit of material gone. So we may have to just pad weld this, which would suck, but this is the kind of rust that's coming off. So you can see it's quite thick. But underneath that, it's not bad. So yeah, we'll have to just hammer this out of here another day. And I'll probably end up having, I can see a little bit of rust right here, so I'm probably going to end up cutting this bulkhead back and trying to find the source.
Alright, so what's going on?
So that's what we're dealing with.
Huh.
The worst spot was over there because there was under the shower floor, they basically grouted the tiles right down to plywood, and there was no membrane underneath it. There was no waterproofing done to the plywood, so it just got wet.
And then it condensated onto the steel.
Well, it just dripped onto the steel. Also, the bottom of the bulkhead was rotten, so I've cut out the bulkhead.
Oh yeah.
And you can see my fingers through there now.
Sure can. Yay. Huh.
But also, like, when you look down here, like if you kneel down and you look at that, how that curved wall is made,
Yeah.
it's like some kind of fiberboard, and it doesn't seem very waterproof. Plus the mouse has been eating the whole bottom of it.
Oh yeah, talk about that. That's a fun story.
Yeah, so when I pulled up the floor from under the shower, there was a mouse nest, and it's fairly recent, I think, because it was full of Max hair. Which makes very good bedding for mice, apparently.
Which would make sense.
Yeah, so it was into the spray foam, right down at the bottom of the floor, And yeah, so we might have a mouse on board. I'm kind of hoping that it was earlier on in the build and all of us painting and stuff had flushed it out, but I don't know. So we have to set some mouse traps.
Yep.
Like, that's all the water damage.
So where exactly was that piece?
This is the curve on the inside of the shower.
Okay.
So it makes up this curved wall.
Yeah.
That is also this wall here.
Right.
So it's 2 layers of this particle board or whatever it is.
Recipe for holding in water and mold, it looks like.
Pretty much, and they never seal it.
Right. No epoxy or anything on it.
No, like it's glued together, but there's no sealing on any of the kerfs.
Right.
Where they've sliced it. And the whole bottom of it was just disgusting, so it's all soft and moist.
So somebody asked at one point why the shower doesn't just like drain into the bilge, or mentioned that it was built to drain into the bilge, and this is exactly why we didn't want it doing that. Because as you can see, this is like the worst rust area pretty much in the bilge, outside of at the aft end where there was wood touching the hull. So we will not be having our shower draining into our bilge. It will not be redesigned for that to happen. So that had a bit of pitting. There's even worse pitting right here, right there. You can see it there. In the process of trying to check things over, Logan found a streak of rust that he followed, and it led him somewhere unexpected.
The rust I'm looking at is up underneath this rib here. And what's caused this rust is when the bulwarks rotted through and held all that stuff in and the deck rotted through, water was able to drip down in between some of these frames. And this one was apparently a bad one. And when they spray foamed the boat, they didn't get it in underneath the ribs as well as they could have. Had they done that, we wouldn't have been dealing with any of these particular problems. Sorry. We wouldn't have been dealing with any of these particular problems, but yeah, that's how it goes. This here, these rust flakes, are what's fallen down from removing the deck. You can actually see how it's run down the inside here and has caused an issue. So we're gonna go up as high as we can and see if we can't find the end of this rust, and then we'll hammer it out, paint it up, respray foam, and put it all back together.
Yeah, it is right there.
Very good news.
Right here.
Okay, that's the last one.
Yeah.
So it's really hard to tell in the camera here, but those pits, some of those pits are pretty deep. Oh yeah, you can see there.
Two.
Crap.
So we're only halfway through.
Well, that's good news.
And it's just in the one hole, the rest are 1.5 mil.
Okay.
I mean, for the amount of pitting that's there, I don't think it's worth it to weld
Okay.
that up. We'll just keep, we'll paint it and we'll monitor it.
Hold on.
Because it's in an area that we can access now. So we'll keep that area accessible. Well, I mean, we'll be able to see if there's a problem, like, really quick, but I don't think it's gonna be an issue at all.
Awesome, that's really good news.
Yeah. It's a board.
Yeah.
a little piece of wood that is straight along the bottom with a nail in it. I drilled a hole so the nail can slide in and out.
Okay.
And then I just measure off of the board to the point on the nail from the deepest pit with my calipers.
Right. The other end though, right?
Yeah. So, like that.
We then moved on to the bilge compartment below the sink. What?
Well, that whole wall is soaked in diesel.
Oh no. Does that mean there's a leak in the diesel tank?
Yeah, that's most likely what our problem is.
So that is the bulkhead we're talking about. This is from the kitchen side or the galley side. So you can see there the rust that he was talking about. It definitely smells like diesel. So you can see the bottom of the wood there. So he's talking about cutting it up here to wherever the top of the tank is, around there somewhere. But the other issue is that you see that bracing along there. So that holds the whole freaking cabinet up. And the whole flooring. So that bulkhead goes in behind that brace. And it's hard to tell whether or not that brace is dependent on that bulkhead or not.
Yeah,
So,
I'm still hoping it's just spilled fuel, but like the amount of rust is not good.
to say this moment was devastating is an understatement. Fixing a leak in a diesel tank, regardless of size, is far from a simple job and dangerous. And we just don't have the time to be doing another job like that.
So that little section looks good.
Okay, so that looks like it was probably just a spill then.
Well, we don't know because the tank goes all the way back there.
Yeah.
And like,
How far back does the diesel go?
well, you see the discoloration in the wood?
At the bottom, yeah.
Yeah, that's all fuel soaked into it. So, I really don't know, but as I'm cutting it, some sections are smokier than others, and that's the fuel in the wood. Oh, and like if there was a pinhole or something up there, it would definitely leak down with gravity.
Right.
As well as the moisture, like the fuel gets wicked upwards.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, preliminarily good, but we gotta keep cutting to really figure it out.
Yeah, and this is just like the top corner here, so it's gonna be the nicest part of the tank.
So at least that much has to be cut back all the way up. Because when you have wood that like touches the hull like that, you get condensation that comes up from the hull into the wood and gets in behind, especially when it's not glued to anything, and causes rust issues, which is what we have going on here. Remember this when we had to cut out huge plates because of the rust we found? Yeah, a lot of that was because of wood against the hull.
Well, fuel tanks condensate anyways because you have a fuel return from the engine returning hot fuel back into a cold tank.
Yeah, fair enough.
So you're gonna get condensation. Not only that, but the hull is like not insulated here, so it's always going to be cold, and then we have our living space here, so that's going to be warm.
Yeah, and this is right under the sink, so this is just a high condensation area, so having wood touch the hull here was just not a good plan. Or having wood where there was a potential airspace between it and steel is not a good plan. Cutting back more wood just exposed even more rust, and things really weren't looking good. Okay, this is with all of it out. So there's a tiny spot of rust up top, up there, and then there's a bit here, Oh, and there's like a bigger spot there. But doesn't look too bad. The worst of it is definitely down there where we initially found it. That bit is still the worst of it. So that's good news because I think it'll be manageable, and most of it is not on the tank. There's just some there on the tank. So there is a possibility still that we have a pinhole here, but it's not very likely. So it was most likely just a spill. But either way, it's good that we've got all that wood off of the hull, because we don't want a hole through the hull like we found in the aft end. There it is, all cleaned up. There's quite a bit of pitting, but none of it is super deep. None of it is deep enough that it should have created a leak, so we're looking pretty good. Definitely still smells like diesel down here, but... Although there was surface rust all the way along the rib behind the bulkhead, the pitting was all in that initial problem area, and there wasn't any signs of leaking from the tank. I can't even express in words what a relief this was. Just like that, crisis averted. But also cutting all of that wood out has definitely added extra days onto our refit project. We will be back in 2 weeks with more of this project, along with info about how and why the paint job in these bilges failed so badly, and what we plan to do to fix them. And if you can't wait that long, you can always join us over on Patreon for our weekly updates. We really appreciate having you here, and we hope you get some value out of our struggles. An especially big shout out to our patrons and our top tier patron John for all the feedback and encouragement through the ups and downs. Would you like me to follow you somewhere? Would you like me to follow you somewhere? Okay, where are we going? Oh, we're going back in there?